Good morning.
Morning. How are you?
You're wearing soccer related paraphernalia on your body now. It's like we're probably like one of the only soccer podcasts that has no soccer stuff in the background or in their clothing or nothing.
I saw it in my closet. I'm like, you know what? This will be good for today's episode.
Cool, brother. Cool. Okay, let's get into it, man.
Yes, sir. We're talking today about soccer IQ as we continue to plug our way through the lessons. A big thing that we've talked about this a lot in the past couple episodes, is one way for a player to increase their soccer IQ is obviously watching games, right? Watching high level games. But I think the same thing can be true of any profession, right? If you want to become good at something, if you want to have high intelligence in a subject, what do? You watch the people that are at the top of their profession and you observe and you take notes. Like, for example, let's say you want to be a lawyer, right? You study your ass off on the law, you read all the books, but it's one thing to just know about the law, right? You also have to go into a courtroom and watch the lawyers and how they are presenting their cases and their body language. So I think it's true in every subject, Gary. Would you agree? I mean, if you want to become good at something, you kind of have to not copy, but you have to see how the best people in the world are doing it.
Yeah, there's so much there. For number one, I'll just start off the bat with what you ended with, what the best people in the world are doing. If you aren't really good yourself or among the best in the world, how do you know who the best in the world are? That's already an issue. Okay. From a soccer perspective, it's easier, I suppose, because it's pretty crystal clear when somebody is a world class player that they are among the best in the world versus everybody else. Why? Because it's just obvious, right? You can't take the ball away from them. They score, they assist, or if you're a defender, nobody can get by you. The best in the world can't get by you. So it becomes more and more apparent at those levels. So it's easier. But just piggybacking off of your lawyer example, how do you know what is a good lawyer, what's a bad lawyer? It's very, very tough. Or how do you know, in the same vein, how do you know what is a good coach versus a bad coach? I think, especially here in the United States, that particular one, we're still so early on the learning curve here in the States to be able to identify what is a good coach and what is a bad coach because the stats screw people up really badly. For example, the current LAFC coach, I forget his name. Do you remember his name?
It's Steve's.
Steve Cherundolo. Yeah. So, okay, cool. So he got his start in Germany. He was at Stuttgart as the assistant coach. That's when I first met him, actually in Germany. We went had lunch together. But here in the States, he started off by coaching the Las Vegas Lights in the USL Championship, which kind of served as LAFC's second team back then. I think it was about 5 years ago. And the team had an atrocious record, Benny, like really, really bad. And the broad scale sentiment at that point is that Steve Cherundolo doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. And so for some reason, he got hired as the LAFC manager whenever that was, 4 years ago, 3 years ago. I'm not up to speed on all the trivia. And I think his first year, he won the whole thing, right? Or maybe he got to the final and then the second year he won it. I don't know. But the LAFC team has been a contender for the title every single year since he's been there. And so, okay, was he a terrible coach and then he became a great coach? Or was he already a great coach and now he was able to show it? Or is he a terrible coach back then and still a terrible coach now? And it's just a matter of him having a fantastic roster versus other teams in the league. So, very, very tough. And sorry for going off on this rant, but I just wanted to pick up where you left off there of going and watching the best in the world, like the best lawyers or something like that, to be able to get better at your profession. I think there is something to it for sure. You have to watch practitioners doing the practice and you pick up things by osmosis there. But at the same time, that might not help. And I'll give you another example. So I've been teaching at the university level for a very long time now. We've all been students, Benny. All of us, every single human, basically, I would say in general, has been a student. They've gone to elementary school, they've gone to junior high, they've gone to high school. Many have gone to college. And so you have over a decade of experience, every human does, of watching teachers, many teachers. But that doesn't mean that you can be a teacher or a good teacher. Do you catch my drift? So the added component here, which I know is what you were getting at, is you, in addition to these things, you need experience. You actually need to go out there and do the deed and do the deed for a very long time. And then the magic and the secrets of the profession will reveal itself to you. So yeah, take it away from there, Ben.
So basically, you could be kind of fucked, just to keep going off the lawyer example. If you think that this attorney is the best in the world, and actually in reality he's not, and you spend your time watching him, you're kind of screwing yourself over, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you might have bad role models too, you see, and then you copycat the bad role models. Not to pick on lawyers too much, but it reminds me of a little clip that I saw the other day of Elon Musk. He went on like a minute and a half or so little chat. He was being interviewed about modern day business. And one of the grievances is there's too many MBAs and too many like lawyers, so too many people doing spreadsheet analysis or financial analysis or legal analysis in companies, basically pushing paperwork, and not enough folks doing actual product, like actually building product or improving product or talking to the customers and improving the customer experience. Like that is what a company is supposed to be doing, prioritizing, not pencil pushing and doing unproductive work. And I don't know why I went off on that a little bit, but it kind of reminds me of, again, we need more people doing the actual practice versus talking about it or being on the sidelines.
Yeah. Did you see that memo that he sent out to all the employees about if you're working for Tesla or SpaceX, non-negotiable mandatory, you have to be in the office 60 hours a week. I thought that was pretty incredible because he was saying, especially if you're one of the like the top advisors and you're not showing your face, he's like, basically, if you're not coming in, I'll just assume that you've resigned.
No, and I agree with it, man. Ever since the pandemic hit, because that's when all the rage of work from home hit. I agree, dude. You have to go into the office. You have to engage with the other humans because there's a lot of benefit to that. And secondly, there's the more cynical take that if you're at home, you ain't doing shit for the most part. Okay. If you're in the office, you kind of have to buckle down and actually have some productivity. So, anyway, where are we going with this, Ben, with the soccer IQ thing?
I know we love to go off on little
I
tangents, but
like it. I like it.
anyways, I mean, starting at the earliest of ages, scary. I think it's tricky, right? Balancing giving kids freedom to experiment while also teaching good habits and encouraging to have good soccer IQ. So how do you find that balance? Like people love to say, letting the kids play, but also at the same time, they need to start making good decisions on the field, right? Because if you're telling a 7-year-old player that loves to dribble every single time, like, no, don't dribble, pass the ball, is he going to develop good soccer IQ?
Right. This reminds me of an email that I recently got from somebody who is coaching 4v4 and 5v5. And so we're dealing with 7-year-olds or 6-year-olds or God knows what age at that age. And they were asking me about the coaching education program. They're like, hey, Gary, ran across you a while back. I've been consuming all of the 343 stuff. Amazing. I'm coaching at this age group. Should I jump into the premium programs at this point or should I wait? And I basically told the guy in a nutshell, hey, man, first off, I don't have any experience at those ages. Okay. The earliest I've touched them was 9 years of age or 10 years of age, something like that. And secondly, so my philosophy is just encourage and nurture the love affair with the ball as most you can at those ages. Don't worry about tactics at all. Don't worry about just all the complexity in the game. Nah, just let the kids play. Okay. Let them play, let them enjoy, be their best friend, be loving and nurturing. That is the most important thing because then gives the kid the incentive to continue with the sport then so that eventually that they get to that 10-year of age spot where things might get a little bit more serious and might get a little bit more competitive because obviously club football starts taking over in a more serious way at that point, and that's probably when you should jump into the coaching education program, the premium program. Or if you're doing 7v7, okay, that's fine, you can jump in at that point too. So to start answering your question, Benny, at the earliest of ages, let them have fun, let them dribble, let them do basically whatever it is that they want. Sure, give them little tips, little bit of advice here and there, of course, but don't be serious about it. And then once you get into competitive club football, maybe at age 9 or 10, then you start talking a little bit more serious. You maybe start talking a little bit more about, building out of the back and how to play team oriented football. And then as the age level goes up and the skill level also goes up, then it gets more and more serious to the point where you reach maybe 15, 16, 17. And now it's heavily tactical. It should be heavily tactical and telling your center back, hey, dude, don't be trying to meg somebody at the top of the 18-yard box. What the F are you doing? Or hey, man, winger, what are you doing? You have your guy wide open, your striker's wide open, and you decide to take on three guys that are right in front of you. Like, F off, you're on the bench at this point. So I don't know. I think it's age dependent, Benny, and I think it's skill dependent.
Yeah. I think the thing that kind of sucks, Gary, at the youngest of ages and even going into like when they get to high school and maybe even college. Like if you are that man child type of player, you can get away with having zero soccer IQ and
Yeah.
you could still be the best player on the team. And if you
Yeah.
don't have a coach that is identifying like, dude, this guy has no idea what he's doing on the ball, maybe they're still gonna like spotlight that player and continue to elevate him. A player to me that comes to mind is like Jordan Morris. Obviously, I never seen a game of Jordan Morris when he was a kid, but I have a feeling he was scoring 6 goals a game, 7 goals a game, and he continued to get elevated. But did they teach him how to play tactically? Did they teach him how to make proper decision making? I don't think so. I mean, it's pretty clear now that you can see his decision making. So that's the hard part, especially for players that are just naturally gifted and kind of that man child as a young kid, because they're kind of not getting held back, but they're not receiving probably the proper education that they should be.
Absolutely brilliant observation. That's the most obvious illustration of how not teaching a player can fail them from developing a soccer IQ. Because if you're very good, and it could be position independent, right, Ben? Like if you're a center back and you're also a man child as a center back, then that encourages that player to do whatever it is that they want because they manhandle the opponent. So you'll see the man child center back dribbling through people too, right? Or you'll see the man child center back launching the ball forward because he can launch it forward better than anybody else can launch the ball forward. And nobody's correcting those things. So next thing you know, that particular kid doesn't know how to, do amazing line splitting passes on the ground, right? Where you're threading the needle or filtering a ball to your striker as a center back on the ground. So, point well taken, Ben. It's just the issue is, does the coach also have the chops from a soccer IQ perspective? One, does the coach he himself have a soccer IQ? Because believe me, there's many coaches out there that do not have a soccer IQ, and they're like, there is no right way to play. My center back launching it forward is just as valid and just as right way to play as you're building out of the back. You have those sorts of things. And then secondly, even if they do have the soccer IQ, and I've known many folks who really get the game deeply, but they can't coach and they don't know how to teach certain things. So you have both those components acting at the same time.
Yeah, we'll get into a little bit on the coaching aspect of having the IQ, but I can remember probably the first team that I was ever on. Like the hero of the team was the center back because this fool could launch it from the goal kick like straight to the other team's box. And the parents would this one get the ball, launch it, and you do it. They'd be clapping, and like after the game, this kid's the hero of the game, but that kid ended up going nowhere. But guess what? Gary, he had phenomenal technique as a 7-year-old kid, but didn't go anywhere because he didn't learn how to properly play and make the right decision. So that was a legend.
No, and for parents out there, this stuff ends up catching up to you because again, at age 15 and up or whatever age, everybody's able to launch it like your buddy there, the center back. So there's nothing differentiating that guy anymore. And now what do you do? Or the man child striker or winger. Next thing you know, everybody up there is super fast and super strong, and the guy doesn't know what to do anymore.
Yeah.
And it's kind of curious to some degree, not being big, fast, strong early could be an advantage because you have the little shrimps and they have to figure out another way to be successful.
Right. They almost have no choice but to develop a good soccer IQ. Like you bring up a lot of times Sergio Busquets and how he would never make it here in the US. I can imagine as a very young child, he wasn't big, he wasn't fast, strong. So he has to be able to be good with his feet. He has to be able to make those line breaking passes. Otherwise, he would have never made it. Right.
Totally. Totally.
So we mentioned, or you mentioned, right, the importance of the coach having a good soccer IQ. Do you think that, let me ask you this, do you think the best coaches are ones who were former players? Do you have to be a former player to be a good coach?
Man, it's a really good question. I know that there are coaches who actually never really played the game and they ended up being good. The names don't stick to my head, so I can't repeat what those are. But generally speaking, I would say you had to have played the game. Okay. You had to have played the game because it's hard to put yourself in the shoes of the player if you've never actually kicked the ball before. Or it's hard to put yourself in the shoe of the player if you yourself have never been on the bench before and had to overcome that, or you have to be able to put yourself in the shoes of the player when on how to I don't know, slot a ball in bottom right corner of the goal if you're a striker or something. And you have to know how it feels, right? And you have to know how it feels to have a defender on your back and try and how it feels to have to focus and concentrate to execute the action. I don't know. There's numerous examples, but I think it's important to have kicked the ball in your life or played the game in your life. Now, let's take that a bit further. What level do you had to have done that at? Then I think it becomes a little bit more nebulous because if you look at so many great coaches historically, many of them, let's take Mourinho, for example, never really got very far at the professional level. I don't recall at what level Mourinho played, but he certainly did not play, as far as I recollect, Division One football, first division football, anywhere. I think he was in the lower divisions or much lower divisions, and he didn't last very long anyway. Bielsa didn't go all that far in his career. And then I think we've had some very young German coaches who started coaching professionals at like in their early 30s. Actually, it was before their early 30s, like their late 20s. They were already like pro coaches, and then they really got far in their soccer playing career too, and they became greats. And then the other extreme, Ben, you have guys like Diego Armando Maradona, who is considered by many folks in the world as the greatest of all time. And when he became a coach, in many people's perspectives, he wasn't great. He was no Pep Guardiola. He was no Mourinho. He was no Ancelotti. He was no, just by many accounts, he was kind of shocking as a coach. And here in the United States, for because we have that's our primary audience, some folks will point to Jurgen Klinsmann, again, World Cup champion, German legend, exceptional striker, became a coach, and he hasn't had much success as a national team coach or as a club coach. I would argue that. I would say that he has had quite a bit of success, but many folks here would disagree with that. And so, do you have to have played? I think yes. Do you have to have played at the highest of levels? I don't think that's the case. And the best coaches are the best teachers, in my opinion.
So Brian Smith, so he was a teacher.
Is that true? I don't know. So there's a running joke for folks out there that I don't know if I started it. I think I may have started because I want to protect other people. I don't want to point at other people, but kind of like looks like a high school history teacher, right? And he goes and he takes over the Seattle
Yeah.
Sounders, and he's won a lot, of titles there with the Seattle Sounders. But you look at his halftime speeches or his pregame speeches, and I'm like, oh my, I just, face palm, you know, Captain Jean-Luc Picard meme, face palm to face, looking at his halftime speeches. It's the driest, kindest, weakest speech of all time, but the team wins.
There you go. I mean, that's kind of like the example that you gave at the beginning, right? If
Mm.
let's say a young coach in Seattle, he wants to become the best coach in the world. He's like, all right, hey, look at the guy who's won this many MLS titles. I'm gonna go observe Brian Sessions today.
Jesus Christ, man. Jesus Christ.
I don't think he was a teacher guy, but I think most of his playing career was like indoor, and I think he played professionally indoor. So
Got it.
there you go. Putting myself in the shoes of a young player, I mean, if your coach is trying to tell you like how to spray a ball, and you can tell that he's never kicked a ball in his life, I don't think myself as a player would respect that coach, and it would be hard for me to say, "Oh, this guy knows what he's talking about."
Yeah, 100%, man. You need the respect of the players. There's no doubt about it. And I think it's easier to get the respect when you've been a legend yourself, but that respect will wane and fade and eventually die no matter how good you can kick a soccer ball as a coach if the players see that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And vice versa. Yes? Like if you can't kick a soccer ball, but you can motivate and you can teach and the players are like, "Oh crap, like I just learned something from this guy. Oh crap, I learned something else from this guy. Oh crap, like it's every day I'm learning something from this guy that I never really realized before and I'm getting better as a player." Then they don't care what your history is at all.
Right? Yeah, that makes sense, Gary. In terms of the actual player on the field, what do you think's the easiest way to identify if they have a good soccer IQ? A big thing that we mentioned in the lesson is the ability to retain possession for the team, right? And that doesn't just mean that every single time they have the ball, they're trying to keep possession. We mentioned in, I think maybe 3 podcast episodes ago about Jacob Barone, right? Phenomenal player that used to play for Brian, but something that you would get upset at him all the time is that this one would never try and go forward. Every single time he was on the ball, it would just be sideways pass or retaining possession. So is maintaining possession that's obviously a good telltale sign that a player has a good soccer IQ. No?
I agree 100%. And for folks here in the States, especially those who are used to the other sports, when is a turnover good? If you're thinking about basketball, if you're thinking about American football, if you're thinking about, hockey, just thinking about all the other sports, when is a turnover a good thing, Benny? No, not turning the ball over is a good thing. And so people's minds immediately go to, oh, but you have to take risks. Yes, you have to take risks. You have to go for that difficult pass or that difficult shot at times, but you have to have the technical capability to execute it so that you don't turn the ball over, which means retaining possession. That's number one. And number two, since this is about soccer IQ, you have to know when to take that risk and when not to take that risk. And that is the key to everything, Benny. Should I take on two players in front of me and try to dribble by them? Well, there's a place and time where maybe that is correct. For example, if you are, to be extreme, just to make the point, if you are Messi, well, clearly there's a high probability that you're going to successfully do that action. Okay. And then two, what if you're inside the opponent's 18-yard box and you have kind of like no choice, but to kind of do that? Great. You're Messi. That's the best decision. You go for it. And you might turn the ball over, but that was the correct decision at that time. If you're a center back in the same situation, probably not a wise thing to do. So it's when do you take the risk versus when do you not take the risk? And that is the telltale sign, in my opinion, of soccer IQ.
Right. And the thing about Messi that a lot of people don't realize is that he's always 10 steps ahead of everybody on the field. I remember I think it was an interview that Pep Guardiola was doing, and a lot of people were giving Messi smack for walking on the field for the first 5-10 minutes. But Pep would say that this fool was like just analyzing in excruciating detail the movements of the other team, where the spaces were. You watch him in the game and his head is always on his swivel. So for Messi to make those decisions, it's because he already knows what the other team is going to do next, right? And that's why he's so successful in not only retaining possession, but also breaking lines, driving forward, creating chances, because he's 10 steps ahead of everybody on the field, which is not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, for sure. And since we're talking to different audience here, nobody has a kid that's messy, and nobody that's listening to us is messy. There's just so many obvious examples. Let's say that you're a winger, an outside back, or an outside mid or something, and you're dribbling, and the natural thing to do is maybe serve a cross into the opponent's box. Okay. Well, you have to make a decision whether you should make that cross or you should not make that cross. For example, maybe there is one of your teammates in the box and there are four opponents in the box. Why on earth would you serve a cross in that instance? You are one against four, and it's an aerial cross where the probability that you're actually going to put the ball on the head of your player and not on the other four guys' head is very, very low unless you have exceptional technical capability. And then, okay, maybe it's worth the risk. But so many times in youth football here, Ben, how many times have you seen just a blind cross? Oh, I'm going toward the baseline. What am I supposed to do? I'll just kick it into the box. I'm just going to kick it in the middle and see what happens. And it's just a dumb decision. No, you don't do that. You hold on to the ball, you pull it back, and you reset play. So I guess my point here is we don't have to do extraordinary examples and invoke Messi's name. There are simple examples like the one I just mentioned.
I know coaches have seen this all the time. I mean, wingers, you mentioned the example of wingers. Some wingers do a great job of getting to the end line. They beat their guy 1v1 and they serve the ball, but there's literally nobody in the box, Gary. I mean, their head is down, nobody in the box because they're so focused on the ball. Their eyes glued to the ball. And sure, they're great 1v1 and they serve it, but guess what? There's nobody even in the box. So you can clearly tell, okay, this player has no awareness versus a player with a high soccer IQ would have already scanned into the box and seen where his runners were. Sure. Okay. He beat the guy to the end line. There's nobody in the box. So what should you do? Step on the ball, wait for your guys to come, or even just reset it. So you can clearly tell when a player it's kind of just like robotic, meaning like, oh, my job is to get to the end line and serve the ball.
No, yeah, and pulling on this example thread a bit more, here's another supremely high soccer IQ that you can recognize for youth players, okay? Same exact situation, dribble the ball to the end line. If the player then decides to try to kick the ball off of the defender on him and get a corner kick, right? Because he knows that there's nobody in the box, for instance, he's like, oh, there's nobody in the box. If I pull it back now, that's fine. I'll retain possession, but like kind of like the attack's over and I'm not so sure. Oh, the best decision now is to ricochet the ball off of my defender and earn a corner kick. That's like super high IQ. If I see a 13-year-old doing that, Benny, I'm like, that's interesting. I'm going to track this kid a little bit more.
Right. I mean, there's a million examples of game situations, but another one, like I seen this at a youth tournament. I seen a 10-year-old do this where their team is winning 2-1 and there's a minute left in the game. And this fool, takes it to the corner and he's holding everybody off. And, the other team's all, what is he doing? That's unfair. But okay, your team is winning. Why wouldn't you want to do everything that you can to have your team win? And to see like a 10-year-old kid do that, he's seen the pros do that.
Amazing. Amazing.
It's not like the coach is telling him like, take it to the corner. And this was like, no, like, I'm going to win. I'm going to hold these fools off.
Yeah. It's evidence that he's watched football. It's evidence that the kid probably has a parent or parents who understand also. And man, such a pet. There's so many pet peeves that I got here with the American soccer mainstream. And this is one of them because they would say, oh, look, the kid's time wasting, terrible, terrible sportsmanship, terrible this, terrible that. No, man, this is a game. You're trying to win. You waste time. This is amazing. This is incredible. Kudos up and down the street every day of the week. I'm doing a parade for this kid for wasting time.
Yeah. It's something that you don't see it, especially here in American soccer. But, I guarantee you in Argentina or in Europe, Spain, Brazil, like if their team is winning 2-1, they're taking the ball to the corner if it's the last minute of the game. And you're right, Jerry. The American media was saying, oh, they're scared or they have bad sportsmanship. They don't want to play the game, but this is the game. You're trying to win the game.
Yeah, and there's nothing illegal about it. What's illegal about it? It's not against the rules. I can
Right.
just chill in the corner and hold off the defenders and try to ricochet it off them and get another corner and do it again and again and again and again. And if they rough me up or I feel a push on the back, I'm falling to the ground. 100%. I'm falling to the ground and grabbing my back.
Yeah. It's funny, Gary. It just popped into my mind. I can recall being on the sideline for Brian's Rage team. And I think this game was like a final. And if they would have won, they would have went to Hawaii for some tournament, right? Big game. I think Brian's team was winning 1-0 and the ball goes out of bounds and it's the other team's ball. And me as like a, 7-year-old kid, I didn't have a soccer IQ. I didn't really. So like I sprinted to go get the ball because I wanted to like feel important and like threw it to the other team. And these fools like threw it in quick and they scored a goal. I was like,
Oh my
and immediately they ended up losing the game. And immediately after the game, I was like, fuck, it was my fault. Like I should have just let those folks go get it, but I didn't know. I had no idea. But guess what? That was a life lesson for me. Now, anytime if I'm on the sideline and my team's winning, go get your own ball.
I never knew that story, man.
Probably even like Brian doesn't know, or even like the players on the team, but like I can recall like feeling like shit after the game. Like, fuck, dude, like if I wouldn't have got the ball so quickly and like threw it to them, they probably wouldn't have scored. Danny would be going to Hawaii.
I think I may remember what game that was. I think was it in Lancaster? Pretty sure it
Think
was in Lancaster.
Yeah, yeah. It was
It was in
it was
it
in
was in Man
Lancaster.
it was in Lancaster, and I think we were playing a team from Washington, if I'm not mistaken, and a team from Washington had 2 great players, one whose name is Danny Mwanga. He was from the Congo. He lost his parents on kind of interesting story, yeah. They lost his parents in the Congo, and I think he was a refugee here in the United States and played club in Washington, became a pro. I think he went to Oregon for university, then got drafted after his freshman year because he killed it. Played in MLS for a while, and I don't know what he's doing now, but he had a pro career. And the other player, gosh, what was the other player? He was a super fast winger. He was like among the best in the country. Hurtado. His last name is Hurtado. Played a lot for the Vancouver Whitecaps. Anyway, I think that's the game,
Yeah.
Ben, because I think it was the final. And for folks who don't know, This team, the Orange Soccer Club Rage, as it was called, was one of Brian's first ever teams that he coached, and he took them from the very lowest levels of club soccer to being a national champion. It's his best work today, in my opinion. You know, it's hard to judge because every team is unique and different, but team that became YouTube famous and obviously launched 343 and all that stuff, and everybody is aware of. Nah, Brian's best work was with that Rage team.
100%. The player's name was Eric Hurtado.
Eric Hurtado, that's right.
No, Gary, that's funny that you remember that it was in Lancaster. I know for sure it was. I can still like remember it vividly. I wonder if you recorded that game. I don't know if you started recording that early, but
Maybe it. Oh, you're right. I don't. Yeah, I don't remember. But I think it was super windy too.
I'm telling you guys, I felt horrible. I never told anybody that story.
I thought what you were gonna say when you were sprinting to get the ball for the other team. I thought you were gonna say that you heard Brian say, "Benny, leave the ball alone." I don't know.
I'm sure he did, but the team was on the other side, so he probably didn't even realize it.
Ah, got you.
But
And it was
yeah,
toward the end of the game.
yeah, I'm telling you, guys, the Rage was winning 1-0, and last minute of the game probably, and I gave these fools the ball, and they scored, and then overtime, and they lost. Or maybe it was tied 1-1, and they scored at the end. I don't know, but I just know they lost that game, and I put the blame on me as a 7-year-old kid. But also, like the other example that everybody I'm sure has seen is the Champions League game. I think it was I forget which team it was, but with Mourinho and the ball boy Tottenham. I think it was maybe a Premier League game. The ball goes out of bounds, and the ball boy like instantly bounces the ball that he has to the Tottenham player, and they score off a counter. And Mourinho gives the ball boy a hug, like sick soccer awareness from the ball boy on the sideline.
Yeah, yeah, man. There's so many
Like,
examples of the ball boys understanding what to do, what not to do. Like they will rush like crazy if their team is down and they need a goal or something. And then if it's the other team, like they'll like completely ignore the ball or throw the ball, 5 yards the other way so that the opponent player has to go grab it. It's hilarious stuff, man. And again,
yeah, yeah,
I'm gonna say something that's sensitive here. Unfortunately, everybody's so sensitive nowadays. There's a cultural component to this too. So, for instance, when you're telling your story about tanking the Orange OSC Rage game and
typical
going
American.
typical white boy American non-soccer first household, like the goody two shoes, wants to follow the rules and has no awareness about the dark arts. And guys, if you want to tune out now, you don't want to return to 343 ever again, be my guest. But this is the reality of not just football, but is the reality of the world. Okay. There are the dark arts that, and I'm not saying doing illegal stuff or things of that nature. It's just, hey, let's be a little bit long in the tooth here, have a little bit of wisdom and say, you know what? No, I'm not going to go fetch the ball for the other team and help the other team. What on earth are we doing here?
I'm offended, Gary.
Well, you've had two older brothers who beat you up, and then you had me and Brian kind of beat you up from the coaching perspective. Like when we would go play at La Habra, you know how me and Brian would always be in the matches. Like we're
Yeah,
playing even if we're playing on your team, Benny, we're like at times encouraging you, of course, but at times also clowning on you or clowning on the others who are making stupid ass decisions, like trying to dribble
yeah,
and shoot like an idiot. Like, what are you doing? Keep the ball, Benny. So I know you're not offended, dude. You have a thick skin at this point after everything you've been through.
1000%, Gary. I'm just messing around. But another example like that, Gary. One of my best friends in high school. He moved to Fullerton as a freshman in high school. He moved directly from Mexico. And this fool instantly became the best player on our high school team. But in playing matches with him, like any little mistake that I would make or our teammates would make, this fool would just absolutely like rip us, like screaming at us. And like in the moment, you're like, fuck, you feel bad. But then it's like you wake your ass up because you don't want to make a mistake that's going to make this fool like pissed at you. Or so just, I know that he got that competitive nature and the will to win in his time in Mexico. He told me that he would be playing every single day in the streets and it was win or die out there. And he brought that mentality to me. So having a player like that, I mean, it wakes you up and you need it for young kids like now, Gary. And some of the first teams that I coach, like a complaint that I would hear from parents is like, oh, like this player is yelling at my player on the field and like they're not being nice during the game. I'm like, what are we talking about, guys? Like you want the players to wake each other up on the field. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm
no,
sure
I
you've heard
do.
things like that too.
No, there's so many cultural examples, Ben. So many cultural examples. It brings me to mind another. I have to look it up. A clip of Carlos Salvador Bilardo. So he was the Argentine national team coach in the 80s. He won the World Cup with Argentina as the coach in 86, took them to the final in 1990. And the clip was him telling the reporters or in an interview something along the lines of, hey, I told all the guys, I told the entire team, listen, whatever it is that happens, okay, all I ask for of you guys is we better not win the fair play award at the end of the tournament, because if we win the fair play award at the end of the tournament, like I disown every single one of you. That's fucking shocking and embarrassing.
People will be offended to hear that too.
Yeah. Oh, you win the fair play award. Dude, that means you okay, cool. We were the biggest pussies on the field. Awesome. Because this is the American mindset here. Oh, they'll quickly Google or go on Wikipedia, find out who were all the teams that won the fair play award and also won the World Cup. Like maybe like Spain, maybe when they won the World Cup. I don't know. I'm throwing this out of my ass. Maybe when Spain won the World Cup, they may have also won the fair play award because they played very clean football. Yeah, very, very clean. They didn't get into any altercations or referee badgering, or there were no controversies whatsoever. And so here, the American will Google and find, oh, so is Spain, like you're embarrassed of the Spanish national team, or Barcelona, blah, 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 because they won the fair play awards. Classic, classic. Guys, eliminate that mindset from your brain. Jesus Christ, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. Ignore the exceptions to the rule. Oh, well, Gary, you should be able to do both, win, be successful, and be super clean. Fine. If that's your values, if that's the way you want to go down, awesome. I applaud it. Go for it. Okay. But the vast majority of the world, the real world, seeing where you can get an edge. And if you can get an edge without doing anything, quote unquote, illegal, hey, man, go for it. Win, be successful. And this is, in my opinion, also the thing about entrepreneurship. If I want to take a little detour here away from soccer, a touch, what do you think entrepreneurs do? They look at the world and they're like, I don't like the world. I don't like this particular thing. There's a problem here. There's no solution here. So I'm not just going to accept the world the way it is. I'm not just going to accept the rules the way they are. I'm not going to accept the ecosystem the way it is. I'm going to build something and color outside the box, color outside the lines to solve a problem and to get an outcome. And that's what makes the world work, Benny.
Bringing it back to soccer, a player for me that comes to mind, that's who I feel like he does a little bit of both, is Carlos Puyol. Right? He was one of my favorite players growing up as a kid, but he's an absolute savage in the game. And of course, he's going to do anything that he can for his team to win. But also at the same time, it's like he's also keeping players in check. Like there's videos of somebody throws like a lighter on the field and PK picks it up and this fool like slaps it out of his hands and tells him to focus, or was always having his teammates back. If somebody hit one of his players, this fool was the first one to come and like crack him on the next play, but not so much in a fair way. But this fool was just a competitor, So I think he was able to find the balance of the dark arts of football, but also like still being a class player. Do you agree with that or no?
I completely agree. And to be clear with everybody, I'm not saying be a dick or an asshole or be. We've all seen Sergio Ramos, okay, the legendary Real Madrid defender, and how dirty Sergio Ramos was, or Pepe, how dirty both those guys were in conjunction, or Mourinho, quote unquote, how dirty he does dirty tricks on the sidelines or antics as well. I'm not saying be an asshole and be that guy 24/7, 365. Those guys have integrity. Those guys have ethics. Those guys have morals. They're good human beings. All I'm saying is, hey, let's look at the real world the way it is and let's deploy tactics at the right place at the right time and the right moments with the right intensity. That's all. Don't be a white sheep, innocent little white lamb there being led to the slaughter by wolves. You should have a bit of wolf in you too.
Yeah. There's a clip from All or Nothing and Mourinho with Tottenham. And He literally asked his players before the game. He's like, "Hey, gentlemen, I need you guys to be today on the field."
Oh, really?
Yeah, 100%.
I feel that you are honestly a very nice group of guys, but for 90 minutes, for 90 minutes, you cannot be nice. For 90 minutes, you have to be a bunch of intelligent, not stupid bastards in the sense of you are there to win matches, man. Fucking hell. We have to win.
So, for example, I gave the example of, after the game that I gave away for Rage, right? I felt bad. For me, that was like a life-changing moment. But I feel like if that wouldn't have happened, maybe I would have never been exposed to it. So I think it's hard for a player to change their habits once they're set, especially as they get older. So how do you go about, changing the habits of a player? Can they at some point, increase their soccer IQ with enough time to still have a successful playing career? Doesn't have to be pro, meaning like go on to college or whatever it may be.
Number one, it depends on the level. The higher the level you want to go, the earlier you better understand all these things. If you want to go to college and be successful in college, okay, you have a little bit more runway to not know these things and learn some of them a little bit later on. And Benny, here's a question for you. Would you, all this dark art talk that we've been on for the past 20 minutes, would you consider this within the sphere of quote unquote soccer IQ?
I really think it is because it's at the end of the day, it's a game and you're going to do anything that you can to win the game. And the best players in the world are doing these types of things and they're the most successful. So why wouldn't you want to give your team any chance to increase their chances of winning? I think it's part of soccer IQ for sure.
Yeah, I agree, man. And from breaking the habits or getting the right habits, which was your question, again, it's your environment. Hopefully your parents help along those lines, and hopefully your coach has the soccer IQ and helps along those lines. And hopefully there's somebody there or there are events that occur, like the event that happened to you, Benny, that kind of change you without your parents telling you what you did was probably not smart and without the coach or a friend telling you what you did was probably not the right decision, but the event itself teaches you the story. So you got those three things: personal experience, the parent or household influence, and then the coach. And of course, if you're watching football, you see these things playing out in football, but then it comes down to who are you listening to while you're watching football? Are you listening to an American broadcaster, an MLS broadcaster? Because the MLS broadcaster, the American broadcaster, is going to be saying, like, oh, look how bad and unsportsmanlike that is. That's terrible, terrible. We got to get rid of diving from the game. This is shocking. This is terrible. And what is it that you're reading regarding football? Whose stuff are you reading and consuming? Because again, if it's somebody who is the white little lamb and is on wants to be placed on a moral high ground and is virtue signaling and saying all these things are bad, then you're obviously not going to learn, Benny. That's from the dark arts perspective, but it's also true from the tactical side of the game. You mentioned Jordan Morris before. Okay, if you're watching Jordan Morris, that means you're watching a Seattle Sounder game, and that probably means that you're listening to an MLS broadcaster. So you're consuming those sorts of narratives of like, oh, Jordan Morris so fast, amazing when he takes the players down the wing. That was a great attempt by Jordan Morris, and he loses the ball, right, Benny? Great attempt by Jordan Morris when Jordan Morris should have stepped on the ball and reset it, maybe with his outside back or settled it and played his center mid. That may have been the high soccer IQ thing, but he does the low soccer IQ thing. And then you've got the broadcasters applauding the low soccer IQ thing because they don't recognize the difference. So you got to really be careful who you surround yourself with and who you're listening to.
Yeah, but here's the dilemma, Gary, because what if you don't speak Spanish? It's like, oh, what other choice of commentator do you have to listen to than an MLS broadcaster?
Yeah, no, totally, dude. It's difficult. It's a challenge. It'd be cool if we had some guests on here that don't speak Spanish, but listen to the Spanish broadcast anyways and have been doing it for a very long time. Cause I know there are folks out there. They've told me on Twitter, they've told me on X in DMs, and we've even had members slash customers of the program say that, hey, Gary, just so you know, I either mute the games, the US men's national team games, or I'll just watch the Spanish language broadcast. Like I used to not understand everything, but over the course of time, I do start understanding more and more and more. So it's a good question, Ben. I don't know what the solution is. I think one part of the solution is consuming media from folks who are multilingual and have a different culture. So we obviously are one of those outlets. And then there are others who are independent media where they have a Brazilian heritage, let's say, or they have an Italian heritage, or they're Croatian, or they're Colombian, and they write articles, or they'll have a podcast, or they'll have a YouTube channel, or they'll just be posting on X. Follow those folks. Get a little taste from their perspective. I think that helps a bit. But you are correct, man. If you're not multilingual, there is a bit of an obstacle to overcome. I'll add one more thing. A lot of international managers like Pep Guardiola speaks English also, but his culture obviously is not English and it's not American. So you can listen to those sorts of press conferences and listen to him talk, or Mourinho, the same thing, or Ancelotti, the same thing, or insert your world class manager of your choosing, and they'll speak English. So try to consume as much from them as you can and try to reduce the amount of things that you consume here domestically in the States.
I'm going to say something, but then delete it from the podcast. We create an app where it's like Duolingo, but only soccer phrases.
Mm.
It'd be legendary.
Well, no, let's keep that. Why would you delete that from the podcast?
Somebody will jack the idea.
Nah, dude, nobody does shit. Everybody has ideas, Benny. Nobody does shit about them. And even the few folks who end up saying, "Oh, I'm going to take an idea or the idea and actually do something," they suck at execution. So they won't. Nobody's able to do dick, Ben. Okay, trust me.
I remember, Gary, a story that you told about Choco, Jose Gomez, who's a former player of Brian, played at Creighton. I think probably he was here at Cal State Fullerton, and he was sitting with you and Brian watching a game. And obviously, you and Brian were, dissecting the game and talking about it. And Choco was like, holy shit, I've never experienced soccer like this, or I never even like considered what you guys are saying. So I think surrounding yourself with high level practitioners, if you're able to, when you watch the games, I think that's huge because you're able to see from their perspective, what they're saying versus the nonsense that the commentators are saying.
No, it's massive, Ben. It also highlights the reality that players have only a very limited perspective on the game because they are players. They are on the field playing, executing. They are not outside of the field observing the whole thing with a different perspective, man. So a whole new world of knowledge unfolds, and I've seen it happen. That's one such example, Ben. I've seen it happen. When players retire, or they don't even have to retire, they can just remove themselves from playing and go watch games with high-level practitioners and listen to the conversations that evolve at that point. They're like, "Holy crap, I had no idea what you guys go through, on a day by day, minute by minute, year by year basis, and the plan that exists, or even simply how to interpret what's occurring in the match itself. They have no idea, Benny. It's funny. It's amazing. And I wish fans, people who aren't players or aren't coaches or aren't even in the business of soccer, but just fans of the sport, spectators, I wish they also had these types of experiences. It would open their minds to a much bigger world.
You're going to laugh at me saying this, but I think I may be a better coach today because I spent so much time on the bench next to Brian, watching him coach. I mean, I had the best view possible, Would I get into the games? Yeah, I would. But I think I probably learned more from just hearing Brian and dissecting what it was that he was doing on the sideline.
Yeah, totally, man. Soccer IQ. All of this is related to soccer IQ. We haven't said that word through big chunks of the episode, but it's all related to soccer IQ.
I think it's time, Gary. Promotion relegation.
Okay, go for it, man. What do you want to ask?
Would the soccer IQ of Americans increase with promotion and relegation?
Of course, brother. Of course. How so? In a million different ways without promotion relegation. What we have is a monopoly. MLS is a monopoly. It basically governs all of soccer here, all of the quote unquote important puzzle pieces in soccer. They have the highest level competition at the pro level, which is MLS. and they also control the pipeline to the highest level competition that is MLS. And what I mean by the pipeline, I mean the youth. So they also have the quote unquote highest level youth league, yes, which is MLS next. And so since it's a monopoly, the people who get into positions of influence, whether they be owners, coaches, technical directors, business folks, broadcasters, members of the media, all of those folks are hand selected or are naturally filtered to those positions if they reflect the views of the monopoly, if they are from a very specific culture and they stay very constrained in their narratives and worldviews. So if there was promotion and relegation, that's all busted to pieces because in a promotion relegation situation, there is no central authority gatekeeping who has influence and who does not have influence. Again, from the media perspective. So you could have coaches, sporting directors, broadcasters, media members, reporters, journalists, you name it, who absolutely have wildly varying thoughts and opinions and ideas. And so you have more of a diversity of information, a diversity of views as to what is a good player, what is a bad player, what is a good coach, what is a bad coach, what is a high soccer IQ decision, what is a low soccer IQ decision. Does Jordan Morris have a high soccer IQ? Does he have a low soccer IQ? Does he have a mid-level soccer IQ? Is Brian Smetzer really like a high soccer IQ coach? Or is he a mid, or is he terrible? And the Seattle Sounders just wins, well, because generally speaking, they've had great rosters, relative to the rest of the competition. You would have all of these varying narratives and ideas, and that elevates the collective soccer IQ of the ones consuming the media, which are the fans and the spectators and everybody that has a touch point with the game. So promotion relegation absolutely elevates the soccer IQ of the country, or would.
I have yet to stump you, Gary.
Keep trying, brother.
We went on a lot of tangents today, but like you said, everything is related.
It's all related, Benny. It's all related. We should insert the famous quote. I think it's from Jorge Valdano, or maybe it was originated in the United Kingdom, that says, soccer is a reflection of life. Soccer is a reflection of society. And these aren't tangents. Business talk is related. Lawyer speak, related. Values and social, political, economic, cultural tangents, all related, all related.